Yes, Wordplay magazine. We're here with Dizraeli. Thank you very much for joining us. Just off the back of the Animal Noises book tour. It was a tour, wasn't it, I believe? Or yeah. And then we have the Joy Machine tour coming up as well, when you're actually coming back to Norwich next month, aren't you?
That's right. Yeah.
First thing I really wanted to ask you was, I saw you did the 20 Years Deep tour a couple of years ago, crowd-funded, as eco-friendly as possible. Can you talk about your experience doing that a little bit?
Yeah, I guess I just wanted to make sense of my position as an artist in the world. Easy to feel like as artists we're somehow outside of the machinery of things that are killing us. Actually we're complicit in it as much as any other kind of worker. So I wanted to try and make sense of the way that we move, the way that we eat, the way that we interact with other people as well, because it's in a way one of the most disconnected, hyper-individualistic ways to behave is to roll in a tour, parachute in, and eat a load of fast food, fuck off again, don't meet anybody other than through the act of selling. So the tour was trying to do all of those things differently.
Right, okay.
We were travelling by public transport, getting in touch with people in the cities before we came, youth music charities in particular, and giving the platform of all the support slots went to young people from disadvantaged backgrounds via local music charities. All the food was via local collectives, sustainable farming or vegan collectives. So yeah, we just tried to make contact with communities before we went there. Tried to make meaningful connections when we were there. We all got around the table and ate together with the support acts and the local people.
Oh, that's great, yeah.
And gave out wildflower seeds to all the audience members of everyone that came on the tour. Trying to leave some kind of legacy of biodiversity and growth and life, rather than just fucking off and having skated over the surface of another place and go to the next spot.
Never really seeing the places you're visiting.
Yeah, and I mean, you know,
things.
it was problematic in a lot of ways because I had to do this huge crowdfunding campaign we raised, it was 12k, and that just about covered the cost of the public transport for everybody.
Right.
So it was very expensive to travel by public transport.
Because how many members of the band was there, to get them all tickets and then all of their instruments? I assume you got full drum kits.
There were 8 of us on stage and another 2 team members, so the tour manager and driver. No, not driver, what am I on about? Tour manager did the driving, got an electric van to move the gear.
Right, okay. So there wasn't any drum sets on the tube or anything like that?
No, although people were bringing their cellos and violins and stuff.
Okay.
Yeah, it was a beautiful experiment, man. It was a lot of work and it was a lot of expenditure as well. So I really wanted to show that it was easy to do things differently. Particularly the transport side of things showed that it wasn't fucking easy because the transport system in our country has been privatised, which means that it's just an engine for profit, which means that it's not accessible for most people, which means that most of the money, as I said, we crowdfunded went on transport.
Right, yeah.
So yeah, it was good. It felt good to be doing it. It always feels good to take action, doesn't it?
And it's a really interesting thing to see as well.
Best antidote for despair.
Yeah, I mean, I'd never seen anything like it before. I don't know if I've just not been looking closely enough, but it seemed like a really unique thing. But has anything you learned during that experience affected how you tour now? Is there anything you've carried with you?
Yeah, I've got a 4-piece band instead of an 8-piece band.
Good start.
And I'm also at a point in my life where I've got 2 kids now, I've got twin boys, and I need to be able to support and feed my family.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of ways in which I'm doing for this tour, to be honest, where I'm cutting more costs. I have to make this make sense financially.
Yeah, of course.
I lost a lot of money on that tour, unfortunately.
Oh, really? That's a shame.
Yeah, I was about $4,000 out of pocket.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, I want to be sitting here and saying, yes, it's revolutionised and completely changed the way I tour. The reality is that it was fucking expensive, beautiful, fucking expensive. And until the way that people are expected to travel in this country is revolutionised, and basic public needs like getting around, public transport, are subsidised in the way that they properly should be. Subsidised, perhaps instead of subsidising the fossil fuel giants, that'd be nice, to the tune of trillions of pounds a year.
We can dream.
We could subsidise public transport instead. So there's a lot that needs to change before that way of touring is properly viable for a mid-range artist like myself.
Right, okay, yeah.
I don't have label behind me, I don't have any kind of industry machinery behind me to help me do that kind of thing. So, beautiful experiment, and it's on the back burner for the moment.
Right, yeah, no, that's understandable. So as you mentioned being an independent artist, having 2 children, all these sort of things, obviously you've got to provide for them and live life and be a grown-up in a society and all that sort of stuff. But as an independent artist, how do you define your own success?
How do I define success?
Yeah.
Well, on days when I'm feeling insecure and in need of validation, probably how many likes a post gets on social media is the most important thing to my shriveled little fetal self. But when I'm actually feeling balanced and wise and I've done my meditation practice, I define success as helping other human beings find symmetry in the world, helping them find sense and meaning, helping them feel seen and understood. Because that's at its best what music does for me. It helps me feel like I'm not alone in my experience, and that my experience makes sense as well. It's not just another burst of chaos.
Well,
so yeah, it depends where I'm at. If I'm grounded, then I've got some wise answers for you.
Well, for what it's worth, the Small Gods album was one of my first major influences in my own writing, so I have you to thank for that.
Beautiful.
So you've done something there, for better or for worse.
I'm very glad to hear that. Thank you.
So you're part to blame for why these lot stuck with me. So yeah, sorry about
I love
that.
it.
Sorry to pin that on you there.
I love it.
So with all of that, being independent, the industry machine can be very daunting, very scary. How do you navigate that as an independent artist? So I know independent doesn't necessarily mean you on your own against the world. What's your team looking like, and how do you navigate the machine?
The team consists of thousands of people that listen to my music, and some of those are committed enough to enabling what I do to continue to support me on Patreon. Patreon is the single most important factor in my being able to survive as an artist, no question. I've also been lucky enough to receive some Arts Council funding.
Awesome.
So I've done a few projects which have had Arts Council funding. Many times though I've done the crowdfunding model, so Indiegogo, Kickstarter.
Has that funded albums or like tours, like 20 Years
Both.
Deep, or everything?
Yeah. So I've done three different crowdfunding campaigns. The first was to fund a video. Second was to fund the Unmaster album. I amazingly managed to raise 21 grand to fund that album, PR it, get the band together, the whole kind of process really. So in a way the people that wanted the music were my record label, were my support.
Awesome, that's a really interesting model.
And in the same way the people I was accountable to for the music as well. It's like, the record will be here by September. I can work to make sure that's the case, because each one of these individual people has funded it, being able to exist. So in a way, that's my team. Right. Yeah. My most consistent kind of team is people that listen to my music. But then secondly, my creative community. Like Danny is. Helped me put the tour together for Animal Noises, but also just a mate and fellow MC and we've rapped together and done things together. A fellow artist. I've just got a really strong and giving, connected community of artists who. And there's a lot of mutual faith there. People really care about what each other are doing. There's a lot of support. There's this kind of. It's really easy to feel in these days when you see artists just sort of popping up with their social media posts and their albums coming out and they're doing a tour. It's really easy to feel that everyone's a kind of solitary atom spinning in the void, but really there is so much interconnectivity and mutual inspiration, mutual support and solidarity and people giving time and advice for free. Like we do something called Makers Meet in Bristol, where we get a whole load of us together and share ideas about our projects and just get feedback from 2 or 3 other people in the room with us. There's loads of ways in which there is mutual support there. So that's also a really, really important element of my team as well. I'm also on a brilliant agency called This Is Now Agency with a guy called Adam who really supports weirdos like me. So yeah, there's a lot of different factors and a lot of elements there.
Okay, cool. I mean, you mentioned Animal Noises there. So that is, correct me if I'm wrong, chronicling 21 years of writing music, poems, etc., all brought together in one physical piece of matter, right, in this one book?
And doodles, and a lot of drawing as well.
Okay.
So I do a lot of drawing, and I'm not very good at it, but I do a lot of scribbling and blog posts as well.
Yeah, okay.
So lyrics, blogs, drawings, things from my diaries, like anything that feels to me like it, not necessarily that it matters now, but that it matters to the story of how how now exists.
That provokes me to ask, when you've then got the whole book completed and it's like, this is 21 years of my life and my thoughts and my feelings, how did it feel to have that book completed and be able to just flick through and be like, that moment in time?
Really lush. I mean, I'm quite used to that in a sense, because I've kept diaries since I was very young.
Okay, yeah.
Since I was about 14. So I've got some shelves and shelves of diaries, and sometimes I flick back through old diaries to kind of revisit old feelings or impressions, or just, what was I actually in that moment, But yes, it's kind of like a condensed version of that, like flicking through an old diary. And it's interesting as well, because sharing a retrospective of your writing as a rapper or writer of any kind, there's shit in there that I would never share in a million years now. And it was interesting kind of re-sharing, as in written form, stuff from 21 years ago.
Yeah.
That was I was just cringing all over in a way.
Some like warts and all features in there, and
yeah, but it mattered to include it because it was just like a truthful representation of the journey, and that's really important to me in what I share, is to be truthful about what the process really is. And there's mistakes in it, and like real clangers of shit that was fine to say 21 years ago, but feels a bit problematic now. But that is a part of my journey as a human, and
of course,
it feels complicated to share that book, but I also stand by it. There's nothing in it that I'm ashamed of.
That's good. Okay, great. When you're taking on a project like this, be it the book or an album or anything like that, do you have any like specific rituals or like places you like to be to create, or anywhere that gets you in that sort of state of flow?
I really like to write around people. So, I like to sit in busy places writing. I wrote a lot of the lyrics for the Unmasked album, sat on the roadside in northeast London in Haringey, where I lived. So I had a table outside a cafe there, just watching the city go by, kind of thing. So yes, it's definitely human stories more than anything that gets me going. So yeah, noisy places for the lyric side, most of all. And musically, I quite like clutter.
Yeah.
I quite like being surrounded by. I realise I have a side of me that's very messy, and I've got a studio at the moment which is hectic with the chaos of like 5 different other producers. It's got a piano and a drum kit and loads of weird like figurines and an old miner's oil lamp and loads of like unidentified baggies and
nice.
And it's a fucking mess. And I thought when I first walked into the studio, I was like, I'm never going to be able to write a thing here. But actually, I'm finding it really productive. There's something about the mess that maybe it's similar to the kind of noise of people. Something about the mess of stuff that helps me to write music as well.
Okay, yeah. So you have a studio that's separate. It's not in home or anything. It's like go to work and go to the studio.
Yeah, now I have a studio like that. Yeah. So
okay.
I have 2 days a week in a studio like that.
Okay, yeah. So how do you find that does that help balance your like work and play, as it were, or work and art, or?
Yeah, it does. It also just helps me find the space that I need to create, because I've got 2 boys at home. They're both 3 years old.
Yeah.
It's madness.
Pretty hectic.
There's very little time and space to kind of sit. You know, I sit with my guitar, and 30 seconds later, I've got a Marmite on it. You know. So yeah, having a space, suddenly having a space outside of home to make is really important to me. The Unmaster I wrote in a room in my house.
Oh, okay, great.
And most of my other stuff, to be fair. So yeah, it's quite recent that I've got that.
Interesting. Well, I know you're a busy man. I know you've got to go get to sound check in about 15 minutes, so I'll cut it off there. But thank you very much for your time and having a chat with us.
Big love, mate. Thanks
Lovely
for having
to meet
me.
you. Cheers.
Big love.